Maryland's recognized for UC.
Mr. Chairman, this is just the website from the District of Columbia National Guard stating the DC National Guard is the only National Guard unit which reports only to the President. And then I'd like to submit for the record also under UC 18 U.S. Code 2384, defining conspiracy to overthrow, put down, or destroy by force the government of the United States, or oppose by force the authority thereof, or by force to prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States as seditious conspiracy, which is synonymous with insurrection.
Without objection. I now recognize myself for the final few moments of questioning. Mr. Romano, you had mentioned to Mr. Griffith earlier, you correct me if I'm wrong, that you were not aware of FBI agents being inside the Capitol during the violence of January 6th.
I think what I said was that I wasn't aware of FBI agents being undercover in the crowd or inciting action of the crowd. I know that FBI agents went to the Capitol as part of the law enforcement response.
Okay, yeah, so we've just found that out recently in the last few months that over 100 FBI agents were deployed as crowd control, which is something that they're really not supposed to do according to after-action reports that we've read. That apparently was never made public during the trials. Did you ever have an FBI agent, one of those agents there, testify on behalf of the defense or the prosecution?
I had FBI agents testify. Typically, they were case agents who were part of the investigative team who...
These agents would have been witnesses.
Oh, no.
Because they were in the crowd, but nobody knew they were in the crowd.
The witnesses who testified in my cases were typically Capitol Police and MPD officers.
Okay. What I'm getting at is, why would they be someone who could be compelled to testify as a witness had it been known that they were there witnessing some of this?
If they were used for crowd control, I'd be skeptical.
But they were inside the Capitol when things were going on. Would they not be a witness either for defense or prosecution?
It's possible.
And if the FBI held that back, that they were there, is that not withholding evidence that could be exculpatory?
I would struggle to think how it's exculpatory. Most things in the Capitol were recorded by cameras, which we produced.
But there are plenty of areas that are not covered by cameras. I've watched most of the footage.
Sure.
So, okay, thank you. Let me clear something regarding the DC National Guard before I move on to my final question. The gentleman from Maryland is right. The president does have the power to deploy the DC National Guard, but there is something that is more powerful than the president, and that is the Constitution of the United States and the separation of powers. He cannot just send the National Guard unless the National Guard is requested by the legislative branch. There were multiple requests made by the former chief of police for National Guard before the request to call them was given, and that was only after shots were fired in the Capitol. That request was made to the Department of Defense in the 1 o'clock hour on January 6th. However, the DC National Guard was not deployed. The order was not given to them for more than 3.5 hours after the request was made. On January 3rd, according to General Milley's own testimony, which I have not only his testimony that he gave to the DC National Guard or to the Department of Defense IG, but also in his daily log that we've had for some time. On January 3rd, he reported that President Donald J. Trump told him to have the DC Guard ready to deploy to keep the people safe and what other resources he may need to keep the people safe on January the 6th. That was delegating to the Department of Defense. There was no question that that was done because there were plenty of discussions, which we have the evidence through depositions and transcribed interviews between the officials who were there and the DOD IG. The discussion was whether or not we should go ahead and deploy them. They knew that they had the authority to deploy the DC National Guard. There was a lot of concern over optics. And one of the TIs, one of the DOD officials said, we did not want it to appear that we were participating in an insurrection. If you believe it was an insurrection by holding the DC National Guard back, therefore you participated, right? Because they were there to help. They would have been a huge deterrent had they been there when Chief Son originally requested them. So I just wanted to clear the record on that, and there is evidence to that. Mr. Nance, is it plausible, given the high-profile nature of this case, that the Biden DOJ influenced how the FBI prioritized the pipe bomber's apprehension?
Yeah, I think that's the point that I've been making throughout this proceeding, is that there was a narrative that was being pushed by the Garland DOJ. And, you know, when you have a careerist like Director Wray, individuals like that aren't really motivated to push back on narratives that they disagree with. So I think in large part that's what happened. I think you had a narrative that was being presented by the Attorney General and was communicated to the FBI Director. And I think therefore that led to the deprioritization of the pipe bomb case.
Well, thank you for that. There is evidence pointing that Brian Cole Jr. was present in all three of the FBI's most obvious evidentiary buckets: cell phone data, license plate reader data, and financial transactions. Is it plausible that FBI investigators knew Cole's identity as early as February 2021?
I think it's not just plausible, I think it's likely.
And if you could remind us, what's your experience with the FBI?
Well, 20-year veteran with the FBI. I started out in the Miami field office working counterintelligence and moved on to dignitary protection, and then finally as a supervisory special agent over ground surveillance and aviation assets.
So there's been a lot of talk about conspiracy theories and narratives, and quite often they can interconnect, right? To one person is a conspiracy theory, to another could be defined as a narrative. I would submit that there is plenty of narrative that came out of the former Select Committee on January 6th that just is not factual, such as the DC National Guard. In fact, they reported, they took what the DOD IG at the time told them, that the DC National Guard was not ready. However, they were sitting ready at the Armory as early as daybreak, because they have been, they mustered and they were recalled ready to deploy because of Donald Trump's order. The handwriting of a note that the Select Committee attributed to one of the witnesses, which a handwriting analysis clearly defined and identified, and a 9-year-old could look at the handwriting of this note and identify that it was one of the counsels at the White House. There are a number of statements, blatant statements made in the January Select Committee's report that just aren't, they just don't pass the evidentiary test because the evidence is opposite. But it still confounds my wisdom is why was no one on that side interested in the pipe bomb when it was a Democrat Vice President-elect who was within feet of the pipe bomb. And there's basically no reference to that in the report. Before we adjourn, I do want to submit a couple of things for the record. Governor Pritzker's sanctuary, Illinois, released more than 1,700 criminal aliens, including murders, pedophiles, and kidnappers. An article, Sanctuary, New York, released nearly 7,000 criminal illegal aliens, including murders, terrorists, and sexual predators. I think that's evidence. There's been a lot of talk about pardons in here. I think there's definitely evidence here that violent offenders are regularly being released back into the community by some of my colleagues and friends on the other side of the aisle. Transcripts show President Trump's directives to, this is a press release from September 20, 2024. Transcripts show President Trump's directives to Pentagon leadership to keep January 6th safe were deliberately ignored. And also an article from August 28, 2024, Pelosi admits blame for stupidity in January 6th security failures. In new release video, I take full responsibility. Without objection. This concludes today's hearing. We thank the witnesses for appearing before this select committee. Without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days to submit additional writing and question forms for the witnesses or additional materials for the record. Without objection, this hearing is adjourned.